aliens were to swoop down and take one of us and squeeze us down to our most basic components, they would discover that we are mostly bacteria. You are mostly bacteria. And that is because we have 100 trillion bacterial cells and only 10 trillion human cells. Our microbiome, and I'm going to actually tell you what that is in just a minute, could be considered a second genome, or as some scientists say, an organ, even another organ. Michael Pollan, he's a best-selling author and food activist. Has anyone ever heard of Michael Pollan? Yeah, he was on the Fed Up movies. Great, great writer and a great food activist. He said that this genome exerts an influence on our health as great or possibly greater than the genes we inherit from our parents. In order for this to really be a meaningful talk, I'm going to have to define some terms. So I'm going to define some terms. And the first one is gut. We really do need to know what our guts are. And a lot of times we think we know, but we don't. It's just the gastrointestinal tract extending from the stomach through the large intestine. And microbiota. Microbiota are the microbes in a community. And then a word that I'm going to use a lot tonight is microbiome. A microbiome is the microbiota's collective genes, also called the gut or the intestinal flora. Okay, everybody, you've heard of Jeff Foxworthy, right? Okay, I actually saw him on Shark Tank last night. I didn't realize that he was an entrepreneur and he was this big businessman, but I know him as a comedian, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of play the Jeff Foxworthy game, all right? And what we're going to do is you're going to help me. I'm actually going to point to you as the audience, and you are going to say, you may have a compromised microbiome, okay? So let me point to you. We're going to practice right now, and you're going to say, you may have a compromised microbiome. Okay, let's do it.
You may have a compromised microbiome.
Okay, great. You did that really well, and in sync and everything. So I'm going to say the condition, and then I'm going to point to you, and you're going to say, okay, here we go. So it's kind of like, Jeff Foxworthy when he says, if you have upholstered furniture on your front porch, you may be a redneck. Remember that? Or if you marry your cousin, you may be that kind of thing. Okay. So this is kind of the same thing, sort of. All right. If you have irritable bowel syndrome or IBS, very good. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, suffer from depression or anxiety or mood disorders, or if you suffer from being overweight or from being obese. Okay, folks, that's the short list, right? And if I had a show of hands, which I won't, of everyone who may suffer from any of these conditions, I would say maybe 80–90% of you would raise your hands because of the fact that GI issues are so prevalent. And I'm seeing them more and more in my practice and people really suffering from so many things. Okay, the benefits of the microbiome. Remember, the microbiome is your intestinal flora. It is your gut flora. It is that whole collective unit of intestinal flora. The benefits is that it digests food, produces short-chain fatty acids, produces vitamins like K and B12, assists in nutrient absorption, and produces its own brand of antibacterial, better than any antibacterial soap that you will ever use. I'm telling you, your microbiome is much more powerful. It's kind of like, I like that little, the little cartoon there because it's kind of like a big brother. It watches out for you and your health. It's amazing. Okay, so a lot of this research that we are going to go over tonight, and believe me, folks, there was a lot of research. I probably looked at 40 or 50 studies and had to synthesize it down to just these, just to kind of give you an idea, to show you some of the newer things that we're finding with the gut research. But it really comes from two things. The Human Microbiome Project, which is a project from NIH that was started in 2007 and is ending this year. basically just to figure out the relationship between the gut and our health, okay? Between the health and disease and the gut. And then the American Gut Project, and I was just talking to Erin about this, and the two of us are thinking that we may sign up for this. Basically, it is a nonprofit organization started at the University of Colorado where you can actually pay $99 and have your microbes analyzed by these scientists, okay? And they will tell you a lot of things. They will tell you basically what kind of bacteria you have prevalent in your gut, and it's really very, very interesting. Okay, some more beneficial terms, all right? Are prebiotics. Anybody hear about prebiotics? They're starting to be more advertised on TV. Well, prebiotics are very, very important. I know all of you have probably heard about probiotics, right? You've probably seen a lot of commercials on TV, or your doctor may have said you need to take probiotics. Prebiotics are just as important. They are the specialized plant fibers that feed good bacteria. Examples are the non-digestible fiber, inulin, FOS, and resistant starch. All of those things, just file that away. We're gonna come back to that. Then the probiotics, the good bacteria to keep the digestive system healthy by controlling the growth of harmful bacteria. And you can see right here, you got your probiotics, you have your little microbes, and they're having a great time eating. And actually, the bad bacteria is not feasting very well because you're feeding the good, and the other ones are starving, which is what we want. Kind of silly, but I know. Okay, so when I was an undergrad at University of Maryland, way back in the Stone Age, early 1990s, we never heard this term. Never did we hear this term. And about 4 years ago, when I was in grad school, I saw this for the first time and nearly fell off my chair. It's something called Nutrigenomics. This is significant. If you don't remember anything that I say tonight, remember this term, because you're going to see it again. It's called Nutrigenomics. Nutrigenomics, basically, this is the definition, but I'm going to explain it in just a minute. It's the study of the effects of food and food constituents and how they change our gene expression. Folks, you talk about a game changer. I have never seen anything more significant in nutrition. And basically what it's saying is that you may have genetic predisposition towards a certain disease. Now, I know for a fact I'm a diabetic ready to happen for many reasons. And probably heart disease can be thrown into that equation, as well as colon cancer. I'm just saying, just because of my family history. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But because of certain foods and because of certain lifestyle choices, you can turn off the gene expression in your body. Now, is that significant? Because so often we think that it's all about genetics, right? And I hope that gives you hope. I hope that gives you hope, because a lot of us think, well, grandfather, grandmother, mother, father, all of these people who are genetically related to me have these conditions, and I'm probably going to have that as well. But you can change your gene expression with the right kinds of foods and some lifestyle choices. Okay, so functional foods are natural or processed food that contain biologically active compounds. These are the foods that help you to change the gene expression, and there are all kinds of, there's tons of them, but I just want to highlight the fact that we have prebiotics and fermented foods with live cultures in that group. There are more of those functional foods, but just to let you know that the foods that we're going to talk about tonight are functional foods. Isn't that cool? Okay. Now, some more terms here. I'm sorry, but I need you guys to know what I'm talking about in this talk. And I just thought about something when we were talking about nutrigenomics. You're not a victim of your genes. You're just not a victim of your genes. So often, there are some diseases that, of course, we cannot cure with food. I totally get that. I totally understand that. But I think more and more we're finding that there are more diseases than we thought before that we can. And I hope that does give you some hope. So glycemic refers to just raising of blood sugar. That's all it means, is raising of the blood sugar. But it's significant because I'm going to talk about foods that either raise the blood, all foods raise blood sugar to some degree, but some raise it more than others. And if I say glycemic food, right, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's food that raises blood sugar, and some foods that are, I'll say, non-glycemic, they don't raise the blood sugar very much. Cortisol. Anybody ever heard of cortisol? Okay. We need cortisol. It is a corticosteroid that is made in our adrenal glands. It is very important, but most of us, unfortunately, because of our modern lifestyles and choices that we make, most of us have cortisol levels that are too high. Okay, we walk around with cortisol levels that are too high. And this is not to our benefit. It is to our detriment. And the reason I say that is, look at the list here, guys. It increases blood sugar. We don't want that, right? Too many of us are walking around with increased blood sugar as it is. Then it also suppresses the immune system, decreases bone density, increases blood pressure, increases infertility, and increases appetite and obesity. How many of y'all want elevated cortisol? Raise your hand. Not one person in this room. And on top of that, it also is associated with depression, anxiety, and lots of stress. Okay, keep your cortisol down, keep your cortisol down. So, and that's significant because of the studies that I'm going to talk about, okay? All right, I want to clarify some things right from the start to avoid conclusion. I am not against pharmaceuticals. I am really against the overuse of pharmaceuticals. I'm going to tell you right now. And even more so from the study that I've done on the microbiome. Because it's not all about antibiotics, guys. I know that we're going to talk a lot about antibiotics, but it's a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs that are wiping out our beneficial gut flora. And I'm not against Western medicine either. There is no place on earth that I'm going to have surgery other than the United States of America. I've traveled all around the world, and this is where it's going to be because we are good at that. We are good at surgery. We are not good at treating chronic disease. I'm sorry, we are not good at it. And something needs to change. And that Nutrigenomics piece could be it. Okay. So functional medicine, basically what functional medicine is it's looking at the root cause of disease. And I love this new burgeoning field of health because there is an Institute of Functional Medicine started by Dr. Mark Hyman. Many of you probably have heard of, but he's one of my heroes, Dr. Mark Hyman. And basically what functional medicine says is that, okay, let's get to the root of the problem. Let's not just treat the symptoms. Let's get to the root of the problem. Let me give you an example. If you have migraine headaches, instead of saying, okay, I have an Imitrex deficiency. Do you have an Imitrex? Who has an Imitrex? No, you don't have an Imitrex deficiency. You may have a hormonal imbalance. You may have dehydration problem. You may have a physiological imbalance in your body in some way. It could even be, I mean, there's just a ton of things that could be the problem with your body presenting in that way. Does this make sense to you guys? There's a problem, Houston. And so often, we just want to throw medicine at everything. I was talking to Dr. Ryer the other day, and he even said, you know, people that come into his office, it's like a pill for every ill. And that's how the Western brain thinks. And I think we need to get away from that model. I'm saying it. I'm leaving town. I can say this because I could be driven out of town for saying this stuff. And I don't care anymore, right? So this, and also, let me just tell you, all of the research from the American Gut Project, the Microbiome Project, it is all new. And when I show you this research, most of it, about 90% of it, is from 2011 on. So this is brand new, so I cannot make blanket statements about the recommendations that I'm going to make to you at the end. I'm going to be creative with it, and I'll tell you in just a minute how we're going to do this. But a lot of these are rodent studies, okay? These are mice studies. So there's some human studies in there, but there's a lot of mice studies. But here is the cool part about all of this. You win either way. If I am 100% wrong on everything that I'm going to show you tonight, 100% wrong, and these researchers who are light years smarter than I am, I'm telling you, these people are smart people, and if they are wrong, and you do the recommendations that we have for you at the end, you win. And if they're right and you do the recommendation, you win. You win because what we're going to tell you at the end is just going to help your health. It's going to increase your stamina. You're going to be a healthier person. Isn't that good? So you win. It's a win-win, right? And I cannot prescribe supplements. I wish I could, but here's the situation with supplements, okay? Beautiful people. This is an unregulated industry. It is not FDA regulated. So I have to be very careful with saying, blanket, you need to be taking probiotics, you need to be doing this. When I have patients coming into my office, I'm sitting there with their medical files, their lab work. I know if they have certain medical conditions. Let me just give you one example. This is one of 1,000 examples. I really like adaptogenic herbs. They're good for adrenal health, and I love them. I have people that, I look like a drug dealer because people come to my house buying Gaia herbs all the time. Brian's like, what are you doing, hon? I'm like, I'm paying for the kids, college, honey. That's what I'm doing. But I love them. But here's the problem, is that one of them raises blood pressure. Now, that's great for somebody like me who has really low blood pressure, right? But it is not good for somebody who doesn't. So I can't just blanketly say, everybody needs to take adrenal herbs, okay? I can't say that. And probiotics are very complicated. A lot of times we think we're getting a great product when there's absolutely no live cultures in that product. So we have to be very careful with me just saying you need to go out and get a probiotic. So a lot of people, it really depends on what condition you have. There's certain probiotics that are better for IBS, that are better for Crohn's, that are better for other conditions. Do you all understand why I can't just tell you what supplements to take? We have to be, I have to be cautious, and I have to be responsible with this information. Okay, it's not all about obesity, okay? And I want to make that very clear because I understand that obesity is a very complicated problem. I have people walking into my office who are at their quote-unquote healthy weight, who are some of the sickest people with blood sugars that are in, fasting blood sugars in the 140s, that are very sick people. Then and then I have people that, especially women, unfortunately, who have hormonal imbalances. They have thyroid issues, and they're eating less calories than I am, and they can't lose weight. So it is a multifaceted, very complicated problem, obesity. And we are going to talk about it because it is a risk factor for many diseases. So we have to talk about it, but it is complicated. Okay. Let's go on to, we know that gut affects immunity. Most of you know that, right? That the immune system, you've heard, starts in the gut and all that. But did you know that the gut also affects mood and the brain? This is significant, and I think this is like the biggest thing that is significant about the talk tonight, is the connection to the brain. And the theory is that the gut bacteria both produce and respond to the same neurochemicals as the brain to regulate mood and cognition. This is amazing to me. Okay, and you see this is really, see this right here? This is not so far from what really happens. And it happens through something called the vagus nerve. And I think this is really cool. It's almost like a communication highway from the brain down to the gut. And they speak to each other. They literally speak to each other, and they regulate each other's activity. The brain affects the gut affects the brain. Isn't that cool? And I think it's a growing body of research that is very significant. Now, we don't even really know how this happens. We don't understand it, but we have clues. 90% of serotonin is found in the gut. Y'all know what serotonin is, right? That feel-good neurotransmitter that we all want to have. But that's not the whole picture. That's not the whole picture. There are other neurochemicals that are found in the gut, like GABA, which is a very anti-anxiety neurochemical. It's like Zen. It's a really good neurochemical that we want. Or norepinephrine. Or we have L-glutamine. I love L-glutamine. I'm a big L-glutamine fan, okay? I will talk a little bit more about L-glutamine. Actually, L-glutamine is a precursor to GABA. We can't make GABA. We need L-glutamine to make it. And that's found in the gut as well. And it's in a lot of plant-based foods, but it also is in, it's very abundant in grass-fed beef. Just to let you know, we have someone here tonight that sells grass-fed beef. Okay, so here are some of the studies about mood and the gut. In the Journal of Current Opinion in Microbiology, am I right? Yeah. Gut bacteria of anxious mice was replaced with the gut bacteria of fearless mice. The results were the anxious mice became less anxious and fearful. And just the opposite happened. And then we have a 30-day course of beneficial bacteria was given to human study participants. Results were the participants presented with less anxiety and depression. Now that was a human study. And then we also have the next study that said that the strain of timid mice were given broth and that was laced with probiotics. The control received no probiotics. Remember, probiotics are the good bacteria, right? After 28 days, ran mice through a battery of tests to detect signs of anxiety and depression. The probiotic group had more boldness in behavior and less helplessness in a swim test, and also a decrease in cortisol. That's very measurable. That's significant. All of it's significant. The other thing is that some of the brain regions had more receptors for that really nice calming neurochemical called GABA, which is interesting. Okay, then we have researchers wanted to look at depression and gut health in relationship to GI disorders. Okay, this is significant, right? Infected mice with a parasite that mimics, actually it was Crohn's, that really mimicked very closely the inflammatory process of Crohn's disease. Along with disease, decrease the BDNF. The BDNF is the brain something neurotrophic factor. The brain-derived neurotrophic factor that helps us process information. Mice behaved anxiously. They gave the 10-day course of beneficial probiotic, and the levels increased. Okay, just the opposite is true. Or no, okay, the probiotics were first given the name Psychobiotics. Isn't that cool? Psychobiotics in 2011. And the probiotics are found to reduce the symptoms of anxiety and the stress hormone cortisol. Probiotics indicated as an adjunct therapy to psychotropic medications. That's significant, guys. And in the real world, okay, I'll get to this. I'll get to that in just a minute. Humans consume yogurt with live cultures. Now that's not your Dannon yogurt. Okay, this had real live tested cultures. A lot of times we think just eating yogurt is going to do it for us, right? Most of the yogurts, unfortunately, the commercial yogurts are so full of sugar, but they're also don't have the live cultures that we're looking for. They're not terrible. Many of them are not terrible, but they don't have that. They don't have as many. This had a lot. They were given 2 times per day for 4 weeks. The result, through a brain imaging scan, MRI scan, a positive effect was noted, less negative emotional reaction to stress. It also brought up the fact, or the question, the study raised the question, whether repeated courses of antibiotics can affect the brain in a negative way. Okay? All right, So in the real world, let's see what's happening, okay? And I just found this. This was way back in 2014. Do y'all remember 2014? Way back. And this study, actually it's not a study, they were actually doing this at a place called Shepherd Pratt. Anybody heard of that system in Baltimore, Maryland? They were testing a probiotic. Now they haven't actually reported on this yet, but they're still in the process of testing a probiotic to see if it would help prevent relapses of mania among patients suffering from bipolar disorder. And I love what their director of psychology said, the idea that these probiotic treatments may alter what we call the microbiome. Y'all know what that is, so you're one step ahead, right? And this is significant. My sister is a psychiatric nurse practitioner in Richmond, Virginia, and I was sharing some of this information with her. She got really excited about this because, as probably all of us have somebody maybe in our family that we know who suffers with mental illness, and it is devastating. And I can tell you that this could be a significant adjunct therapy to psychotropic drugs. And I think that gives a lot of people some hope. Okay. So we talked a lot about probiotics. Now we're going to talk about prebiotics. What do prebiotics do? Who knows? What? Yes, they're fiber, and they are to some degree, Marion, but they feed the good bacteria. So they're the food for your microbiome, okay? We all need to eat, right? So the human participants took prebiotics, not probiotics, prebiotics, for 3 weeks. Demonstrated less anxiety about negative or threatening stimuli. Also presented with lower levels of cortisol. So that is always a good thing. Okay, now I have to preempt this next slide by saying that I realize that autism spectrum is a very complicated condition. And I am not saying that gut flora is the only thing that is a problem with autistic children. I know that there are other factors. I realize that. But I think that some of this is very interesting when it comes to autism. I do believe that that is one of the factors that go into autism, but I don't believe that that's the only one. So they treated mice that had autistic behaviors, and many of the autistic behaviors were no longer present or strongly ameliorated. So I thought that was interesting, and I think that there are more studies to come on that. Okay, so the gut influences the brain, but just the opposite. When you get upset, do you feel it in your gut? I think most people do. Do you feel it in your gut? Yeah. We get, that you talk about, that just hit me in the gut, or, it just made me sick to my stomach, that emotional stress, right? So we know that the brain affects the gut. Okay, so people who, again, are much smarter than me are starting to see the profound connection between the gut and the brain. This could be a great benefit to the mentally ill as well as to all of us who want a greater sense of well-being.